The latest chapter of Dragon Ball Hakai is finally ready, and this chapter is extra special since it brings you an incredible 70 plus pages and marks a very important reunion for our beloved Goku. Shall we check out this brand new chapter? Stay connected to the channel and let's go to the video. Hakai. Chapter 41. Goku reunites with his parents. An absolutely fierce battle unfolds in a Saiyan village, with shadows darting around and explosions going off everywhere. A group of armed men fires at a woman advancing toward them, unfazed by their shots as she presses her attack. The woman lands a kick on one of the men, sending him flying toward the other two. She then concentrates energy in her hand and fires a powerful blast at her opponents. This woman is Fasha, a soldier from Bardock's elite. Fasha's blast explodes upon impact, wiping out the trio of enemies in the explosion. Immediately, Fasha notices more trouble. Another group of enemies approaching, firing multiple rounds at her. She readies herself to react, but before she can act, a man steps in front of her, telling her to leave this to him. This is another soldier from Bardock's elite, Shugesh. After protecting both Fasha and himself with an energy shield, Shugesh charges at the shooters, advancing despite their relentless gunfire. Once he's close enough to one of the opponents, his shield explodes, killing everyone in the vicinity. Elsewhere, two men fire at someone. That someone is Borgos, another soldier from Bardock's elite, who is currently holding two already defeated men in his hands. With both hands occupied, Borgos uses his mouth to unleash an energy blast at the enemies, overpowering their shots and consuming them in the blast. Borgos mocks them, calling them a bunch of weaklings. He notices something coming from above, and when he looks to the sky, he sees numerous defeated enemies falling like rain. One of the men, still conscious, begs for mercy from something approaching from above. That something is Tora, a soldier from Bardock's elite and second in command. He descends, delivering a brutal kick to the fallen warrior, driving his foot deep into the man's body before pulling it out, drenched in blood. Reuniting with his three companions, Tora asks if they're done. They confirm that they are. Tora is pleased to hear it and says that now only their leader remains. However, a voice from above says otherwise, drawing Tora's attention. The one who spoke is none other than Bardock himself, the group's leader, holding a massive man by the head as if he were nothing. Seeing the enemy leader defeated, the others smile. And if you want to make me smile too, leave a like on this video right now, so you don't forget later. Your like is super important for this video to reach more people on the platform and help Dragon Ball Hakai find more fans, so don't skip it, okay? Now, back to the story. After the battle, the group takes a moment to rest in the village. Shugesh, full of excitement, praises their leader Bardock, saying he's truly amazing for single-handedly defeating Verdon, the giant of the East. Borgos emphasizes how impressive this feat is, pointing out that Verdon was rumored to be a descendant of the mighty family of giants. Bardock, however, downplays the feat, responding that, descendant of the giant family or not, Verdon was just a low-class warrior, like himself. Fasha counters, saying that Verdun wasn't just any low-class warrior. He had a power level far above the average for their class. Tora, agreeing with the others, says Bardock shouldn't underestimate his achievements, but instead take pride in them. Their conversation is interrupted when someone calls Bardock through the communicator. The one contacting him is Gark, the commander of the Planetary Surveillance Department. Gark informs them of an incident not far from their location involving a low-class criminal and wants Bardock and his team to handle it. Bardock sighs, then asks Gark to pass the details to Tora through his communicator because he has something else to do. Gark agrees without questioning. Tora is surprised and curious about this delegation and asks what Bardock plans to do. Bardock explains that King Vegeta has been eager to hear about the takedown of the giant and his gang, so he wants to personally report to the king. He asks if Tora and the others can handle the situation, since it's just a low-class criminal causing trouble. Tora assures him they can and tells Bardock to go ahead. in the village. Goku, posing as the low-class Saiyan Turles, takes a walk but realizes that everyone is looking at him a lot. Kakarot remarks that he's probably being sought after because of what happened at the castle, and the guards who saw him might have given a description of his face. He suggests Turles should hide his face. Turles remembers feeling a hood inside his cloak, so he pulls it over his head to conceal his face, ensuring no one can see him. Suddenly, Turles' attention is drawn to a strong smell of food, and he remembers how hungry he is. The fruit of power he ate didn't satisfy his hunger and left a bad taste in his mouth. He declares that he needs more food. Kakarot tells him he doesn't need food since Goku is a god and doesn't require sustenance, eating only for pleasure. His hunger is purely psychological. But Turles insists that hunger is hunger and solves it by eating. Then he rushes off toward the source of the smell, despite Kakarot yelling at him not to. Turles arrives at a restaurant where a woman with a very familiar appearance is cooking. Turles gets excited, saying the food here looks delicious. Kakarot tells him to think things through, but Turles isn't interested in thinking. He approaches the woman and asks what's available to eat. She points to a corner of the restaurant, saying the ready-made food is over there. At the restaurant counter, there are several cauldrons of food, and when Turles sees them, he becomes ecstatic. Realizing it's useless to argue, Kakarot simply gives up. Soon enough, Turles has devoured all the food in those cauldrons. The woman, now confirmed to be Genie, comes over carrying another cauldron and apologizing for not paying much attention to him earlier as she was busy. But when Gin sees that all the food is already gone, she's utterly shocked, asking how he managed to eat it all since it was supposed to feed multiple customers. Turles says it's because he hasn't been eating much lately. Gin doesn't have time to listen to excuses and simply asks him to pay up because she needs to buy more ingredients. Turles doesn't look too happy when he hears the word money. Gin asks if he thought it was free, and in fact he did. Kakarot starts complaining, saying this is exactly what he was trying to warn about earlier. They don't have any money. Turles tries to justify himself, saying he misunderstood when she told him to eat as much as he wanted. But Gin, being very patient and not wanting to cause trouble, says he can pay later. However, she warns him not to try to skip out on the bill because her husband is a soldier who even leads a team. She asks Turles to tell her his name and where he's from. She also mentions that it's not polite to wear a hood covering his face and asks to see who he really is. Turles simply obeys everything she says. Even he doesn't understand why. He just feels compelled to do whatever she tells him. Turles begins to remove his hood, but suddenly a group shows up in front of the restaurant, drawing their attention. It's Bardock's elite, except for Bardock himself. Gin is surprised to see them there. Tora tells Gini to step away from that criminal immediately, which shocks her. Turles gets a little worried about being discovered. Shugesh, wasting no time, charges in to capture Turles. But Turles, politely asking Gin for permission, grabs the pot she's holding. As Turles takes the pot, Gin gets a better look at his face, and in that moment, she can't help but see Bardock's features in the man standing before her. Turles hurls the pot at Shugesh, catching him off guard and dunking his head into the food. Shugesh starts stumbling around, shouting in pain, and Turles takes the opportunity to trip him, making Bardock's elite soldier tumble and roll over the counter. Borgos and Fascia are surprised and immediately go on the offensive. Fascia throws a punch, but Turles, moving with skill and agility, grabs one of the restaurant's stools and uses his hand to deflect her punch, leaving her stunned as she misses completely. Then, Turles tosses the stool at Borgos, who's coming right behind her. Borgos smashes the stool with a punch, but before he can react, Turles is already sliding under him. Tora follows with a punch, but Turles skillfully evades with acrobatics, dodging Tora's attack. Gin scolds her husband's subordinate, telling him to be careful with the restaurant. Tora apologizes. After evading all of them, Turles makes a run for it. Tora orders his team not to lose sight of Turles, pointing out that he has a way of disappearing without a trace. They rush out of the restaurant after Turles, leaving Gin behind as she yells for them to wait. Turles is trying to get away when he's quickly caught up to and surrounded by the four. Still covered in food, Shugesh yells that Turles is going to pay for what he did. Goku reflects that to use instant transmission, he'll need to put more distance between himself and them. The problem is, they can fly much faster than he can if he wants to maintain this disguise. Since Turles, the person Goku is impersonating, is supposedly much weaker than these soldiers, flying too fast would blow his cover by revealing his superior power. Kakarot asks what Goku is going to do. Goku says he can't exceed the power level Turles is supposed to have. However, he senses that these soldiers aren't absurdly stronger than he is, unlike Vegeta was. This means he can counter their attacks as long as he doesn't show dominance. In this case, he'll rely on his skills, techniques, and tactics to handle them. If you're not yet subscribed to the Hakai channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications now so you won't miss upcoming chapters of Dragon Ball Hakai or any other Dragon Ball content we produce here, okay? Now back to the story. At the royal castle, Bardock is having his audience with King Vegeta to report on his latest mission. He concludes by stating that the rebel group, led by Verdun, the giant of the east, has been completely annihilated. They will no longer pose a problem. However, much like the leader of the rebel group recently eliminated by Zorn, Verdun insisted he was the legendary warrior, the Super Saiyan. It's worth noting that in chapter 39, it's mentioned that the armor Goku or Turles is currently wearing resembles the type used by a rebel group that Zorn, one of King Vegeta's elite soldiers, was tasked with destroying. This is one of the reasons why Turles was mistaken for a criminal, and why all this confusion started. Most likely, Bardock is talking about the leader of that criminal group. After hearing Bardock's report, King Vegeta sighs with both relief and concern. The king comments that this legend has been more vivid than ever in their people's minds recently. He doesn't blame them. As with the increasing exploitation by that damned Frieza, the people yearn for a hero to defeat that scum. The problem is that every idiot slightly stronger than average wants to proclaim themselves the Super Saiyan, and other fools end up following these imposters, rebelling against the king. The king's army has more than enough power to crush these imposters with ease. The real problem is that if this matter spreads too much, it could reach Frieza's ears and cause trouble. Bardock tells the king that, at the very least, he can assure him that Frieza won't hear about it from the giant of the east. King Vegeta is pleased to hear this and commends Bardock for doing a good job. He then asks how Verdun was defeated. Bardock replies that he defeated him in a direct fight. Verdun's power level was slightly higher than his, but Verdun wasn't very smart. King Vegeta finds this amusing, calling Verdun a joke. The story goes that the family of giants was full of fantastic warriors, many of whom reached the level of the middle class, with some even achieving the power of the high class. They were so strong that the king's ancestors feared them greatly because of their immense power. Verdun was very proud of being the last descendant of this noble family, but he was defeated by a low-class warrior. Bardock doesn't find it as funny, and the king, realizing he may have offended him, clarifies that wasn't his intention. He tells Bardock that he recognizes him as a benchmark for low-class warriors. The king uses this opportunity to mention that Raditz has been integrated into the same team as his son, the prince. Raditz has already shown latent potential to become a middle-class warrior and will probably even surpass Bardock in the future. Bardock takes this information rather coldly, simply stating that he hopes Raditz does a good job. The conversation is suddenly interrupted by someone urgently calling Bardock through a communicator. Bardock recognizes the voice in surprise. It's Jean. He asks what's going on and how she's speaking to him through a communicator. Guinea replies that she's using Shugesh's scouter, which accidentally fell into her pot. Bardock demands to know how the hell Shugesh's scouter ended up in her pot. Gin tells Bardock to come over immediately because Tora and the others are turning their village upside down, trying to catch a criminal. Bardock is surprised to learn that the criminal ended up in their village, and his concern and shock catch King Vegeta's attention. Remember, Bardock didn't hear the information about the case involving Turles. He only requested the details be passed on to Tora, and likely left shortly after. This means he had no idea where Turles was. In the village, things are in complete chaos. Turles, with Fasha and Tora hot on his heels, flies at the maximum speed he can manage without raising suspicion. The speed at which they move stirs up the air, knocking over people and objects in the village. Suddenly, Borgos surprises Turles by emerging from behind a building, ordering him to stop. Right behind him comes Fasha, already prepared with a flying kick, but that Turles was just a mirage, and when she reaches him, he vanishes, leaving Fasha to miss and hit Borgos squarely. The two crash into a nearby building. Tora, seeing that the one they were chasing was nothing but a mirage, searches for the real one. The real Turles is behind a building, watching everything unfold. Seeing that his plan worked, he prepares to teleport away. But Shugesh shows up, frustrating Turles as someone is always nearby. The burly soldier cracks his fingers, eager for violence, and promises to turn him into porridge. Turles thinks for a moment about how to deal with this guy, but doesn't take long to come up with an idea. Shugesh charges at him, but all Turles needs to do is point a finger, and suddenly Shugesh stops in his tracks as his stomach starts rumbling. Shugesh clutches his stomach, realizing something's wrong. Kakarot, not understanding, asks what Goku just did. Goku explains that this guy seems like the type who eats a lot, so he figured a sudden bathroom emergency might happen. All he had to do was direct his telekinetic power to Shugesh's intestines. And voila! It's easy to cause that kind of reaction when the other person is much weaker than you. Desperate, Shugesh runs off, shouting that he can't wait any longer and needs to go now. Kakarot liked the idea, saying it was a great way to handle a weakling like that without raising suspicion, but he urged Goku to hurry up and get out of there. There wasn't enough time though, as Tora descended from the sky with an attack ready. Tora scolded Shugesh, saying that's what happens when you eat too much, but he promised to take care of it. Turles managed to dodge, and when Tora landed on the ground, he noticed something glowing beneath him, which promptly exploded and sent him flying. What Goku had just used was one of those energy traps he employed against Jiren in Dragon Ball Super. Goku quickly moved away, trying to get out of Tora's line of sight. He ended up heading toward a young Saiyan carrying some wood, and as Turles passed him, the young Saiyan, startled by the pressure of the air, tripped and dropped all the wood he was carrying. Fasha, now extremely irritated, charged at Turles, shouting that she'd had enough of this crap and preparing a powerful attack. But Turles suddenly stopped and struck a strange pose with his hands. Alarmed by this, Fasha hesitated to advance, prudently wondering what kind of technique he was about to use. Turles began making smooth hand movements, reminiscent of hypnotic gestures, and started singing a lullaby. It didn't take long for Fasha to fall completely asleep. Kakarot seemed to recognize the technique. Goku explained that he must have accessed these memories. This was the hypnosis technique Master Roshi used against him during the martial arts tournament when he was a child. The technique was called Yoiko Min Min Ken. The song Turles sang, which was also sung by Master Roshi in the original Dragon Ball manga during the martial arts tournament, is a traditional Japanese lullaby from the Edo region, now Tokyo, with various versions. This song is called Edo no Komoriuta, but it's more widely known as the Edo Lullaby. Barely finishing with Fasha, Turles sensed something coming from behind and acrobatically dodged a powerful attack that destroyed the ground where he had been standing. The attacker was Borgos, now wielding two massive cleavers. Turles was dumbfounded at the sight of such large blades and asked where Borgos had gotten them. Borgos replied that he took them from the village butcher. He added that since Turles is such a sly one, it seemed fitting to chop his legs off. Turles was slightly surprised to learn such a massive weapon belonged to the butcher and grew curious about what kind of meat he was cutting. Borgos charged with the cleavers, launching a flurry of attacks. With Goku's mastery but Turles' insecurity, the cleavers are all dodged. After leaping away, Turles landed near the wood the young Saiyan had dropped earlier. Picking up a piece, he adopted a new combat stance, one reminiscent of a certain weapon Goku had used long ago, the power pole. Feeling more confident with the piece of wood in hand, Turles taunted Borgos, telling him to bring it on. And Borgos did. He unleashed a relentless series of attacks against Turles, who, demonstrating impressive skill, fended off every strike. Despite the fragile nature of the wood compared to Borgos' massive cleavers, Turles avoided the blades entirely, nullifying every attempt from the Saiyan soldier. After deflecting multiple attacks, Turles finally went on the offensive, launching a low strike aimed at Borgos' legs. Borgos managed to jump out of harm's way just in time. Descending from his leap, Borgos prepared what he believed would be the finishing blow, declaring that it's over for him now. But Turles' grin said otherwise. Planting the wood into the ground, he used telekinesis to grab Borgos midair, hurling him onto the wood. But first, the impact on his sensitive area left Borgos writhing in pain, immediately dropping the cleavers and howling in agony. Turles left Bardock's elite warrior utterly disoriented with pain. He nostalgically remarked that it had been a long time since he'd used that tactic. Goku was referring to a similar trick he had pulled on Ninja Murasaki back in one of the early arcs of classic Dragon Ball. Kakarot felt slightly embarrassed by it, calling it a classless move. As Turles began leaving the village, Jean came running after him, pleading for him to wait. At that moment, another figure appears and Turles asks who it is this time. The newcomer is someone very familiar to us, and apparently he's familiar to Turles as well. Goku notices that this man looks just like him, and right away he starts suspecting who he might be. At that moment, a distant memory surfaces in Goku's mind, a memory from long ago where he's inside a spaceship and his parents are standing outside watching him as they say he must survive. This memory seems to unlock something in Goku as he enters a kind of shock. Goku begins piecing things together, seeming to understand now who this man is and who that woman he met earlier might be. Bardock comments that it looks like Turles caused quite a commotion around there, but as he prepares an attack, he declares that the fun is over now. Jean comes flying in, shouting for Bardock not to do it and begging him to wait. But Bardock doesn't listen and fires an energy torrent at Turles. Unexpectedly, Jean jumps in front of Turles, screaming even louder for Bardock to stop. Only now does Bardock notice Jean there, and he panics, realizing what he's just done. At that moment, Turles seems to snap out of his shock. In a completely eccentric and unexpected way, Goku meets his parents and their friends. What's going to happen next? How will Goku react to this situation? Find out in the next chapters of Dragon Ball Hakai. So what did you all think of this massive chapter? Even though it was 73 pages long, I feel like it went by so quickly, right? Well, this mega chapter of Dragon Ball Hakai is our special New Year's and Christmas gift to you all. We wanted to end the year in style with this story, and I hope you enjoyed it. Comment below with your thoughts on the chapter and what you think will happen next. Also, let us know what you'd like to see happen from now on in Goku's adventure on planet Vegeta in the past. Remember, you can get early access to new Dragon Ball Hakai pages by signing up for our Patreon, so the wait for new chapters is much shorter. By joining Patreon, you not only get exclusive benefits, but also help keep this story alive. It's thanks to the heroes who support us that this manga is still going strong. So, if you want to become one of the heroes of Dragon Ball Hakai, sign up for our Patreon. The link to learn more is in the video description and the pinned comment. If you don't want to miss the next chapters of Dragon Ball Hakai or the many other types of content we bring to the channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, don't forget to like the video because it helps a lot with the platform's reach, allowing Dragon Ball Hakai to reach more people. Your likes make a big difference. If you have a friend who's a Dragon Ball fan, share this video with them so more people can discover Dragon Ball Hakai. Remembering that if you want to read all the chapters of Dragon Ball Hakai, you can find them on our website, dbhakai.com. Check it out later. Finally, but no less importantly, if you're one of those true Hakai Shins who made it to the end of the video, comment Goku meets Bardock and Genie, just so I know you made it this far. That's it everyone. A big hug to you all and see you in the next video.